Welcome to the Chronically Planned Podcast, where belief meets strategy and purpose is planned with grace. I'm your host, Shadrika Holmes, mama, lupus warrior, and the creative behind Lupus Speaks and Chronically Planned. This show is for women living with chronic illness who are ready to stop surviving and start building a life that actually works. Every episode is rooted in the Chronically Planned method, a framework built on belief, flexible planning, and aligned execution. So if you've been looking for a space where faith and planning meets rest and realness, welcome home. Let's get into today's conversation. I'm so excited for today's episode because we're not just talking marketing. We're talking about what it really looks like to build a business with intention while navigating both chronic illness and motherhood. My guest, Andria Singletary, is a founder of Mompreneur and the host of Marketing Without Socials for Moms podcast. She's helped countless women grow from profitable businesses without relying on social media, and her signature membership, the Social Media Detox Club, proves that success doesn't have to come with burnout or hustle. And what makes this conversation even more powerful is that Andria is also a lupus warrior. Just like many of us listening, she's a living example of the chronically planned method, leading with belief, creating structure that supports her wellness, and executing her vision on her own terms. So, if you ever felt like your chronic illness disqualifies you from showing up or being consistent in your business, this episode will remind you otherwise. So let's join Andria to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. It's so crazy how we kind of cross paths from threads. I haven't been on there in so long, and I just started looking for different things outside of my normal audience, and I just posted a post and you came up, and I've learned so much from you already. So, can you share with my audience briefly a little bit about your lupus journey, how it has shaped you, and who you are today?
Yeah, so I was actually diagnosed with lupus when I was 12. Basically, I woke up one morning and both of my knees were like the size of volleyballs. And so my mom took me to ER. They ran lots of tests. I had to do an MRI scan, all of the things. And so they diagnosed me with lupus and immediately put me on a very high dose of own. And the effects of it, it affects your mood, it causes weight gain and different things like that. And so for a 12-year-old girl, it was a lot. If you remember back to like that middle school transitioning to high school phase and everything, it was a lot for me, just trying to understand the diagnosis and just dealing with my own just hormonal changes and different things like that. But thankfully, my mom was always my biggest advocate. And so she ended up finding me a pediatric rheumatologist who helped wean me off of the prednisone and put me on Plaquenil instead, just so I could live, I don't want to say a normal life, but just not have to deal with the effects of the prednisone. And so that really helped me a lot. And one of the biggest things that really carried me during that time, and even today, just was my faith. I knew I had the diagnosis, but I really just stood firm on God's word and praying and just trusting him to keep me and everything. And I can honestly say that I haven't experienced a lot of the symptoms of lupus that many people do. For me, it's primarily presented as joint pain and arthritis, but I've never had to be hospitalized. I've never had anything really happen internally with my organs or different things like that. And so I've just always just kind of lived by this model that I am a survivor and just really pressing through and not letting it define me, not letting it stop me from doing a lot of the things that I wanted to do. And so throughout my schooling, I was involved in sports and different things, and just really trying to live my life as normal as possible and everything like that. But I had to be mindful of my stress, because stress for me is a major trigger for flare-ups and everything. And it was hard. My mom, she was a single mom. We moved around a lot, just a lot of different life transitions and stuff. And so really just trying to figure out the best way to manage my stress and everything. I've I'm going to be 36 this year, and I'm married. Me and my husband have 2 beautiful kids. And that was like one of the things that came up when we decided to start trying for kids was, would there be complications? You know, the doctors, they tell you all these things because you have that label of lupus and whatnot. And so I just trusted God that, you know, we would be able to have kids and I wouldn't have any complications. And so I had 2 healthy pregnancies. Both resulted in C-sections, but I had my beautiful babies. They're both healthy. And the crazy thing was, like, throughout both pregnancies, I didn't have any flare-ups with lupus or anything like that. Like, everything was very calm. And I found out, like, talking to one of the doctors, that they say that can happen, where you experience the opposite, where like you don't experience any symptoms and stuff like that. So today, my kids are 4 and 2. I'm also a business owner, so running my business from home. And yeah, that's kind of like my journey and everything.
So awesome. I just know there are so many others that get discouraged when it comes to like the family planning portion of our lupus journey, where they're just like scared or don't know what to do when it comes to, you know, having families and kids and the energy that it takes.
Yeah.
That leads me to your business and brand, marketing without social, but you started with mompreneur. So, like, how was that navigating everything when you first started being a mom and trying to run a business online and a wife and maintaining your faith and managing your lupus symptoms, even though it's not like what everybody else's may look like?
Yeah. So I was kind of crazy. I started my business when my son was 1 and I was 12 weeks pregnant with my daughter. And honestly, now that I look back on it, I was like, girl, what were you doing? Because I had no energy, but I was determined to start this business. You know, after being a mom for a year, just having my son, I really wanted to have something for me because I just was so consumed with motherhood, and I had him at the height of COVID. So we were still in the middle of COVID, being stuck at home and everything like that. And so I was just like, you know what, I need to do something for me. Like, prior to having my son, I worked full time. I was a preschool director. And like, so I've always brought in income. I've always contributed financially and everything. And so I just missed doing that. And so I was like, okay, I need to figure out a way to do it and still be able to be that present mom and everything. And so I started out launching a virtual assistant business. It was called the Savvy VA Mama, and absolutely loved doing that. I was literally doing all of the things, like offering everything you can as a virtual assistant. And then as I grew closer to my daughter's due date, I was like, okay, I'm about to transition to a mom of 2, and what I'm doing right now is not going to work with 2 kids, especially it would be 2 under 2. And so I started looking at, okay, how can I niche down, but do something that would really give me that flexibility I would need as a mom of 2. And so I decided to pivot to podcast management, took a course, finished the course, I think about a week before I went into labor with my daughter. And then after I had her, I had notified my clients and everything, and I just fully pivoted into podcast management. Thankfully, one of my VA clients, she also had a podcast, so she just kind of transitioned me over to being her podcast manager. But it really gave me that flexibility I needed to be able to just work those odd hours. So I was able to be present for my kids, but also when I could tell, like with my body, like my energy was low and different things, like I could rest when I needed to rest. I didn't need to be available during like certain hours. And so a lot of times when my daughter would wake up to nurse, that's when I would be editing client episodes and different things like that. Because again, like when you're managing someone's podcast, you don't have to be on during business hours. All they care about is that their podcast has been edited and scheduled and all that good stuff. And so that really kind of helped me make that transition. and navigate, again, just being a mom of 2 young kids. But I also really lean on my husband a lot. He's such a great support. And so part of that was just asking him to step in more to do different things that normally I would do. So even to this day, he's the one responsible for like cooking dinner for the week. He's the one that gets the kids down at night in the evenings when he gets home from work. And so that really helps me to kind of be able to navigate all of that, because I do deal with the fatigue and the low energy and stuff like that. And I'm really a firm believer, like when it comes to my business, building it in a way that fits my current season of life. And so, I did the podcast management for a bit, but I did eventually get burnt out with it, especially like I shared with how lupus presents in me. It presents with the arthritis. And so doing like editing so many client episodes, I did start to see like that impact, like my joints and everything, and just not really being able to keep up with it how I used to be. And I did shift into doing more like coaching and supporting clients with like more podcast strategy and different things like that. And so for me, like if anything is impacting me in a way where I'm not able to kind of fully show up for my family, or it's impacting my health, I am quick to pivot. Like I'm not afraid to pivot or shift things in my business. And so that's kind of like the I take in everything. But like, I'm not going to say like, oh, it's easy, I got it all down, because it's hard. Like, especially my kids are very, very energetic, and trying to keep up with them, it can be a lot at times, but I try to do things to kind of meet both of our needs. So like over the holidays, we got the kids a trampoline and a sensory spinning chair, and it allows them to work that energy out. I will put on like trampoline workout videos for them to allow them to get that energy out. And while they're doing that, I will relax on the couch, just trying to like regain my energy and stuff like that. And so it's just, I don't know, kind of like just finding these different ways to really support me and my family's needs, and just being mindful, really mindful of my own needs, and really trying to make sure that I'm doing things that ensures that I'm well taken care of, that I'm not putting myself last, and different things like that. And that comes both to with like how I run my business, as well as how I'm showing up as a mom and a wife.
Yes. That's pretty much like a mom with a chronic illness journey, especially when they're trying to run a business. So for people with chronic illnesses starting a business, how could they balance growing visibility with protecting their energy and their health? Because that's also something that takes a lot of time for me, is creating the reels or creating the carousels and just like trying to show up on social media with stories. It comes exhausting because you also want that privacy. You don't want them in every aspect of your life every single day. Like some moments don't have to be recorded. So what do you recommend for that as a strategy in their business?
Yeah, so when it comes to visibility, marketing your business, like we have to create content, right? Like it's not something we can not do, because you won't sign clients that way. And so I'm a firm believer in showing up in a way that feels good to you, that aligns with who you are, that takes in consideration your energy and different things like that. And so for me personally, I have stepped back from social media. I don't really post on Instagram because it's an energy sucker for me. It's not just you posting and that's it. It's you posting and engaging, and you have to keep posting in order to stay relevant, so to speak, in order to please the algorithm and whatnot. And so I lean into other methods, like with my own podcast. Podcasting is very simple for me. It's very low energy for me. So being able to, record my episodes and get them scheduled out, like that's something simple for me. I also lean into doing collaboration. So I will partner with other business owners who have similar audiences as me and, get my name and my business and my offers out there that way. It doesn't require a lot on my part. So like, for instance, podcast guesting, I just show up and I record the interview. I don't have to edit anything. I don't have to do any of those things other than, help promoting the episode when it goes live. So I would say really looking at how do you actually enjoy creating content? How do you actually enjoy showing up? What are those things that you like doing that doesn't feel like it's such a energy suck for you, that's not super time consuming for you? And really leaning into those things. Like, there's no one way to market your business. There's no one way to get visible and generate leads for your business. And so when you really lean into what you actually enjoy doing, it makes it so much easier to stick with it. Like, with my podcast, I'm almost 250 episodes in. Like, I really enjoy podcasting. Like, it is something that I don't question whether or not I'm going to do it. I don't feel like, I got to record another podcast episode. Like, it lights me up. It energizes me. And so I lean into that. So find what that is for you. It could be podcasting. It could be blogging, YouTube. If you enjoy social media, lean into that, but like, find what works for you and what you really enjoy.
Yeah, I think I enjoy podcasting, especially when it's the solo episode.
Yeah.
Just because you really don't have to do all of the cutesy stuff. You can just say what you need to say, make a point, and like, again, it's been a passion project of mine, so I really didn't really care whether or not people were, had something negative to say or whatever. I just wanted to put out, my message or whatever. But I wanted to go back into like the lupus side of things. So how has having lupus influenced the way you run your business? Like, I like the way you show up, because had I not said chronic illness, I would have never known that that was something that you had, because you run your business without that being the leader factor of, your content or, what you do. It's more as relatable to moms, and I get that too, but I just like, because, I've been that person that's just like, okay, I have lupus, and I've been living with lupus for a long time. But how do I stand out from that without having to attach myself as this chronic illness person? And I just have not figured out a way to do that. So I just embraced it. It's like, okay, well, let's come on, chronicpreneurs, let's go. How do you make yourself like stand out as a brand without having that as a focus point?
So for me, truthfully, like, for the longest, I never really talked about, having lupus. And I've always been like that, even from the time I was diagnosed. I remember my doctor, she was like, hey, there's this group for other kids that have lupus. I think, you should come and really share your story. It would be encouraging to others. And I was just like, no. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until I got older and I started like having friends share with me that they were diagnosed with lupus recently, and connecting with other women online sharing how they're having these diagnoses like later in life, that made me start actually talking about it. Because when I was that young, like, I never knew anyone who had lupus. I think I had one relative on my dad's side who, she was like my great aunt or something that had it. But outside of that, I never really knew anyone with lupus. And so that's why I didn't really talk about it. But now I am talking about it more, because I'm coming into contact with more women who are having it, and just being able to share, I've lived with it so long. So just being able to share how I've navigated and stuff like that. So I know this is not even answering your question yet.
No, it's fine, because that is a thing where there's so many women who are still in that space of not sharing, or they're afraid or ashamed. Like, I have an aunt on my dad's side, and you can't ask her nothing. Like, she's not going to tell you. She might say maybe her symptoms is because it's visible, but she's not going around telling people, like, this is what I have, this is what I'm dealing with. Like, they're very, like, I don't know what that is, because I've always been vocal about it and always wanting to connect. I just didn't really know how until social media came and it started booming. I was like, okay, there's other people.
So I look at it as like, as a business owner, we have so many stories to share. Like, we're not just this business owner. For me, I'm not just a mom. Like, there are so many pieces to me. There's so many aspects to me. And so I find different ways to share those different pieces of me, because yes, not everyone in my audience will be able to relate to it, but I do have some people who will. So like, I had sent out an email, I think at the start of this year, about I had a flare up over the holidays, and I noticed that it's a trend that every year in December, I have a pretty bad flare up. And so I'd shared with my email list. That was my first time really talking about having lupus.
Oh,
And I
wow.
had someone respond saying that she thought she had lupus and she's been telling her doctors and they've been ignoring her, not taking it seriously. And so she asked me for my advice on how to best navigate it. If I had never shared that story, we wouldn't have ever had that conversation. And so I just say, like, really finding different ways, like, to share your story. Like, it doesn't always have to be about business. And I think sometimes we think like, oh, I just have to talk about my business. I just have to talk about my offers. No, you can share those personal stories, like what you're comfortable with, to build those connections, because the reality is that, like, people are really looking to connect with people that they want to invest in. They want to know that you are a human. They want to know that you really get it and everything. And so sharing those stories. So like for me, yes, I talk a lot about being a mom running a business. I talk about being a mom of a child with autism running a business, because there's just so many layers to it. And so I think just finding ways to incorporate those stories, like, again, it doesn't always have to be focused primarily on like promoting your business, promoting your offers, but just sharing those personal stories to connect with your audience and different things. It just makes a world of a difference, because at the end of the day, like, yes, we want to sign clients, but we also want to sign those clients that we're actually going to connect with, that share the same values as us and different things like that. And so when you share your stories in your content and everything, it really helps attract those people who truly would be a good fit to work with you. And different things like that.
So I don't know. I'm in awe about like everything that you do, like you podcasting and you're running your offers. Would you have great offers? Do you want to share what your offers are?
Sure. So my main offer is I have a membership called the Social Media Detox Club, and that is where I support you with getting visible outside of social media through collaborations. So really teaching you how to leverage podcast guesting, speaking engagements, bundle collaborations to attract your ideal clients and just grow your business that way. So I really love this membership. It's a lot of fun, and it really kind of just takes that pressure off of having to show up on socials. Like if you're drained and burnt out with social media, especially just with everything happening here in the United States, just it seems like every day it is something, and you want to spend less time on socials. That's why I created this membership. It gives you that way to step back from socials without feeling guilt, without worrying about your business falling apart. So yeah, that's my main offer. And then I do support with podcast strategy. So I'm putting together some new offers for that, but I am a podcast strategist as well. So if you have questions about podcasting or wondering how I could support you with that, you can always send me a DM on Instagram. My handle is mompreneur.
So there's one more thing. I guess I would just ask, like, what is one key takeaway or strategy that you like to leave with the audience about marketing with visibility, especially for those navigating life with chronic illnesses?
Yeah, so I would say the number one takeaway is doing things on your terms. Like there are lots of experts out there. There's lots of noise in the online space, and it's easy to fall into the trap of, oh, I need to do this. I need to implement this strategy. I need to be on this platform. I need to do that. And the thing is that you don't need to be everywhere, And so really just looking at what your capacity is, what you realistically can commit to, and how you can do things in a way that truly just honors who you are, like that supports your lifestyle, supports your health and your overall well-being, and leaning into those strategies that are going to allow you to do that. So again, if social media is draining for you, you don't have to do it. Find something else. Like truthfully, I feel like long form content, anything that's SEO driven, that brings in your highest quality leads, because those people are actively searching for a solution. And so when they find you, they already know they want to invest. They're just looking for the right person. So if long form content feels better for you and is something that's more in alignment with your season of life, then lean into that. But just know you don't have to do everything. You don't have to be everywhere. Find what works for you.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining me today, Andria. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think that was a good takeaway for me as well. Just like you don't have to be everywhere at once, and you can still master all of these things and be successful.
Yes.
Yes. So where can everybody find you if they do want to work with you?
Yeah, so I always recommend checking out my podcast, Marketing Without Socials for Moms. That's where you get to know more about me, know more about like how I can support you, and really get a feel for like my coaching style and everything like that. So you can check out my podcast. My website is mompreneur.com, and that's where you can learn more about my offers, as well as I have a few free resources on there. So yeah, those are the main places you can find me.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, and until next time, guys, peace and be intentional.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chronically Planned. If this resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and leave a quick review. It helps more women like us find this healing space. If you want to go deeper, book a one-on-one power hour, grab your faith-based journal, or check out my digital studio where I help women bring their visions to life. You can find all the links at chronicallyplanned.com or connect with me on Instagram at Lupus Speaks. And remember, your belief is your foundation. Your plan is your anchor, and your next step is where the magic begins. And until next time, peace and be intentional.